clear about that. I don't monitor networks. I don't fix broken computers, right? Things like that. Okay. What I do is preventative, right? So why is my screen it's not going? You guys can see it, but for some reason it's not flipping. Let's try that again. Why is it not flipping? There we go. Sorry, let's try that again. That is interesting. It is not. Oh, there we go. So what is business continuity? So, basic definition is, how do we keep your business going when, key things that you need, right, that you cannot run your business with are lost, right, or disrupted. So basically, asking the hard questions of, what happens if the building burns down? Right? Even if you're a home business, that's a problem, right? Flooding. People are like, oh, we don't get flooded. Well, Ellicott City, guess what? Widespread internet outages. I don't know if you guys heard about that big one that happened back in the middle of October. Widespread internet outage in Virginia and Maryland, all the way down to DC proper, Alexandria, Arlington, on the same day, almost at the same time. And some of those people were without internet for 5 days. Okay. So, it does happen, right? So, how do we keep everything going? You have to have a plan. That's what it boils down to is when things go south, what is your plan? Going to Starbucks is not a plan. Okay. That's a reaction. Okay. So just want to be really clear about that. So these are the outages that I talked about. Thousands of businesses were out. And, the one at the bottom, caused by a car accident in Northern Virginia, that's what took down the Baltimore network all the way down to DC proper and Arlington, Alexandria. So, disasters, right? People never thought we'd have a pandemic, obviously, right? All these things. So, just some brief statistics here, right? So that you guys know what's going on is that 40% of businesses, right, do not reopen after a disaster, right? Building burns down. If you don't have a plan, right? And then so within that, another 25% of that 40% fail within 1 year. Okay. And, 90% of companies fail within 2 years of being hit by a disaster. And a disaster could be ransomware. It doesn't have to be physical where it's a fire or flood, right? So I have a client, he got taken down by ransomware and he was out of business for 2 full weeks. Okay. Because he couldn't access anything. He couldn't get, anyway, so long story short. So we're going to spin through these kind of quick. So you guys have time for Q&A. So things that are, that people don't want to work. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I've never been hit by a ransomware, right? So, I don't have anything that people don't want, which is one of the biggest misconceptions that is out there. Okay. Everybody has something that a hacker wants. And even if they don't, it's got value to you, like family photos, things like that. Okay. So, don't think that you're immune. Nobody is immune to a cyber attack. Okay. So these are the questions you have to ask yourself, right? What's your tolerance, right? For being out, right? How much money are you willing to lose, right? And, how long would it take before you go out of business, right? People don't like to ask those questions. Those are the questions that I ask, right? So best way to tell you what I do is, that's preventative is, I have a client, they're a television political ad campaigning company. And, they often work on their deliverables until literally the last minute of the same day that it's due. Okay, just fine tuning, their production, things like that, right? So it's not like they have it sitting on their table for a day and they can send it out. It's all electronic. So if they're late, they actually get financial penalties, right? They work with the federal and state at the federal and state level. So reputation damage is a big deal. They don't want to wind up on the front page of the Washington Post. These are very powerful people, right? So they have an on-premise server, and for very good reasons, by the way, and a low capacity VPN. For those that don't know what a VPN is, does everybody know what a VPN is? I don't want to have to spend time talking about it if nobody knows, if everybody knows.
You can touch on it. Go ahead and touch on it.
So real briefly, VPN is, a tunnel, right? It's a secure tunnel. It's encrypted that lets you go from point to point. So think of a VPN as a black straw that you're drinking something through, okay? White straw, everybody can see the color, right? They can see the consistency. They can even tell that you're sucking on it. Black straw, nobody can tell. That's exactly what a VPN does. Can't tell whether something's being transmitted, and when it is, it's encrypted. Okay, so your risk lowers a lot. So they have one that's really low, right? Low capacity, and it didn't get used a lot. And so we've been talking to them about a high capacity VPN for a number of reasons. And it wasn't just in the event of a catastrophe. It was also for other reasons that they would need to use it for anyway. Customer kept putting us off later. They're like, oh, the chances of something bad happening, it's so low, And so my question was, well, are you willing to self-insure, right? So if you can't make it deliverable and you get sued for $1 million, are you well enough along that you can absorb that? You can take care of that, right? What about lawsuits, right? So we've been talking to them for a long time about this. We told them, look, the day you decide you want it, it's a 3-month wait. It's not flipping a switch. Okay. So, so anyway, so long story short, fast forward to COVID, beginning of March, I get a call from the managing director. Hey, Manny, that solution you were talking about? We need that tomorrow. Because now everybody's working remotely. They got to dial into the server that before with low capacity they could get away with. And I told him, I said, look, I've been telling you it's 3 months. We get to get construction permits, building permits, and all those government offices are closed. Then decide like, oh, this is going to go longer. And now you got to wait another 3 months. Now you're half a year without what you need, right? Is that worth your risk, right? So that's just one example. Another one is opposite. Law firm, they understood the importance of technology, realizing that it's an investment in their business and not a capital expense, right? They had a lot of risks that they realized. And, we moved them to a cloud environment where if something crashed or whatever, they could literally go to a public library, use a public computer, securely do business without missing a beat. They could even run, and so the Windows environment, they could do that on an iPad. They could do it on their phone, okay? Simulated Windows environment. So, we also got them into a true voice over IP situation. So, so the results are here is that, significantly decreased downtime, higher productivity, all the obvious stuff, right? So, but people don't think about these things. They're like, you know what? I don't want to pay money to prevent something, that may never happen. But my question is, again, is like, well, that doesn't mean the risk isn't there. Just because you don't, you want to ignore it doesn't mean that it's going away. It's still there, right? So, think of me as your insurance to prevent those things from happening. So real quick, I told Kurt I would make that, really, really quick. So how we help businesses, right, is to preventative model. How do we prevent something from happening in the first place? IT support company, what they do is they're the opposite. They implement monitoring and all this stuff, but they don't kick into gear until something breaks, right? There's no prevention in their model. It's just not the way they're built, right? So I actually work very well with support companies because I implement the preventative model. We put things in place and then go to an IT support company to support it. Okay, so it's integrated. We work together. It's not a handoff where like, oh, here's a stack of paper, figure it out. So, so we ask all the hard questions, right? So, so basically, here's some obvious things, and the other thing we do too is we work with your And if you don't have a good one, I have a very good one. Work with business insurance companies to help you better qualify for some of these insurance policies that are here, right? Because maybe you're paying too much because your cyber risk is too high. How do we help lower that, right? How do we make sure that you qualify for technology related E&O? So things like that. So it's not just, Kurt said IT. I really don't like to use the word IT because what we do is we actually get into how your business operates, right? What's important to you. The only reason it's got IT component is because everybody uses technology, but it's very much a true business continuity solution that we offer. Okay, so don't think of it as IT because then what happens is everybody defaults to, IT support, and that is not what we do, not at all. So anyway, so I want to open it up for Q&A. See if anybody has any questions or that fast enough for you, Kurt?
That was perfect.
Spun through that pretty fast.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. We have a
so
number of,
anyway, so does anybody have any questions?
I do. I'm a small business. You start talking about pulling permits and construction and all these things. So I guess I just have no conception of what it is that you do when you implement these plans. But and yet I still feel like I am an important business that has my hand in a lot of small businesses. And I have my PC at home, and I have virus protection, and I have spam block, and I have my memory in the cloud in case I need to reboot back to tomorrow. And I feel like I'm doing most of the things, and I use a very sophisticated server who is supposed to protect me against things. It's one of these data places, where they have all your servers set up, and you buy a certain amount of space and things like that. So you have plenty of speed and all that. So I guess I'm just wondering beyond that, I guess I'm just kind of missing a little bit about what it is that you do.
So, I ask the hard questions, right? So what happens, Kurt, if you're away, so you're a home business, you're away from home, and you've got all that stuff sitting in. I mean, yeah, it's great that you have stuff in the cloud. It's a great first step. Okay. But you also have hardware, right? Mm-hmm. So, that's a failure point. So you leave your laptop at home, you go out shopping with your wife. God forbid your house burns down and takes all that with you. Okay. Question there is, how long can you be without your technology? Because yeah, you can go buy a new computer, restore it. That's going to take a day. Can you afford to be down a day or two while you're restoring your computer, installing your software all back on there, putting everything back to the way you want it, right? Those are the hard questions. The other thing, Kurt, is that, one of the things that has really changed with COVID is that, people that are used to working in a real office, behind a corporate firewall, no longer have that protection at home, right? So they're, I have a firewall on my computer. Okay, so the purpose of a firewall is to prevent and trap bad actors before they hit your hardware, before they hit your computer. The fact that your firewall is on there is like trying to prevent cancer after you've already gotten it, right? So the key thing here is prevention. The firewall blocks things ahead of your computer so that by the time, for whatever you're doing to your computer, it never even hits it. Okay. So I don't know, how many people have, other people in their house that do gaming. So gaming is a huge vulnerability point where hackers know that where you download your games from, that's their number one go-to to put viruses in, and it isn't just infecting your computer but stealing your data and all this stuff. And so if somebody in your house downloads that and infects your network, it's going to affect every single device that's connected to that network, regardless of whether it's wired or not. Okay. So a firewall is something where we could put something in, and you know what? I have one in my home. It's not a corporate big ass, multi-$1,000 thing. It's not. But if somebody else in my house downloads something, you know what? They don't. I have a separate network in my house from it. That's part of my firewall. They download something bad, they don't even know about me. I mean, I am like not even on that network. Okay. So, and you would be amazed. I mean, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but you would be amazed the number of times that you get pinged, your network will get pinged from the outside in. I mean, it is just to see whether you're home, to see whether you're active, right? You know, I did a test on mine when I first got my laptop. In one day, I got pinged from the outside in just to see whether I was home 5,000 times in one day from unknown sources, unknown actors. Okay. So it's one of those things where ignorance is bliss, but that doesn't mean the risk isn't still there. It doesn't mean that you're not at risk.
So you will just do an assessment for somebody, talk about what you have, what you got, what you don't got, and you'll do a review and assess the risk.
Well, that's part of it, but it's also like, well, how are you using your technology, right? What are your pain points, really? What can you do? What can you not do without, right? So, I'll give you a great example. Okay, so one of the things that was with the internet outage down in Florida, and this isn't really for a home business, but it'll give you get the point across. So one of the things that happened when the internet outage happened in mid-October, affected the Virginia State of Board of Elections, right? And it was on the final day of voter registration, so people couldn't get on. Okay, and what caused it was a construction company digging in a place that they weren't supposed to be digging and cutting a fiber line and wiping out internet for like just a very wide area. Okay. Well, the state board of elections didn't take that next step, right? They had one single fiber line running into their building that got cut. They did not think about because it was such a remote chance, but shit happens, right? Excuse me. What they didn't do was, hey, we are responsible for, election registration. We cannot afford to be down at all, right? Especially on the last day of voter registration, putting in a redundant fiber line, right? That's routed in a different place so that if one gets cut, the other one fails over automatically, and like you don't miss a beat. Okay, those are the questions I ask, right? So what happens if your internet goes down? And it's in the middle of the winter and it's a snowstorm, Kurt. You can't get out of the house, but you have no internet, no power. We had something up here in Maryland. It was an ice storm back in around the 1999 timeframe where knocked out power in my part of the neighborhood not my neighborhood. So in Maryland, it was a really wide, I think it was like a 10, 15 square mile area. We had no power for almost a week. Okay, so what do? You can't get out. It's a snow. So the roads were all iced up, really bad. Like you couldn't go out, right? So what do? What's your backup? What's your contingency?
Okay, I'd like to ask.
There are technologies put in place where even without power, you can still operate your business, right? But it's investment. People think of it like, oh, I don't want to spend that money. Chances of that happening are nil. Okay, well, that doesn't mean zero, right? And just because there's a 90% chance it won't happen doesn't mean you won't be part of the 10%.
All right. Does anybody else have any comments or questions or feelings about this? Anybody? Go ahead, Tom.
Yep, Tom.
Well, thank you, Manny, because I think this is very solid information. While it's been forever time ago, I do come from the technology area, and this stuff really does happen. And, you know, the way to protect it is, you know, a lot of what you've got indicated here. So thank you for that. My only question is that as a home user, one laptop, assuming my house doesn't burn down, what's my best protection?
I mean, I'd have to come take a look at your, you know, your environment. You know, I always recommend that, you know, so a lot of people leave their computers on overnight, right? They don't want to worry about the boot up time because the computer might be old or whatever. Well, guess what? Hackers know that at probably 2 o'clock in the morning, you're not up. Your computer's on. Great time to get in without you knowing.
Yeah,
right?
I shut it off.
What's that?
I shut it off every night.
Yeah. You know, it used to be you could just put your computer to sleep without doing a full shutdown.
Right.
Now there are viruses that can infect you even while your computer is in sleep mode. Okay. So, you know, the other free piece of information I'll tell you is, you know, people that have stuff up on Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, guess what? The responsibility for backing up that data is you. It's not Google or Dropbox or OneDrive. Okay. If the only reason they back stuff up is so they don't wind up on the front page of the New York Times. Okay. And when they restore your data, there is absolutely no guarantee that that data is current. It can be a month old. Okay. And if you read the fine print, that's what it'll tell you. It is your responsibility to back that stuff up. So having the cloud is a good first step, but it's not a fail-safe solution, right? So there are solutions that are out there that we can talk about to get that stuff backed up for you by third parties. But you know, yeah. So there's a lot of unknowns out there, and I get that you guys aren't in technology. That's why, you know, I do what I do. You know, to say, oh wow, you know, you have a vulnerability here, you have a vulnerability there, you have a risk here. You know, let's get this down on paper, right? So, hackers know that people are all working from home now. So, you know, they know they're not behind corporate firewalls. You know, that's why I've been really telling everybody, you know what, get a firewall. You know, like, oh, I don't want to spend that kind of money. Okay, again, question is, you know, what's your risk tolerance, right? All your information gets stolen and it gets tracked back to you. So the way hacking works, no hackers get all the information from one source, right? They have very sophisticated software. They get a piece of information here, another one from somewhere else. They assemble it and they build a profile, and now they go, oh wow, you know, Laura lives, you know, in this part of town. She's got her mortgage here. She banks there. She's got her car loan somewhere else. You know, her business account somewhere else. Yada yada yada. Right? And if that information gets tracked back to you, you're setting yourself up for a lawsuit. Right? So how do we protect that information, right, while lowering your risk, and so that you can afford cyber insurance? Right? It's not cheap. But well, it's relatively cheap, but you know, how much you pay is directly proportional to your risk to the insurance company.
All right, Manny, I thank you. I thought that was awesome. Moved along very nicely. I think you gave us some great things to think about. I am looking forward to working with you and more in the future with Team Network. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise. Let's give a round of applause for Manny. Hooray!
Thank you, everybody.